Jennifer still keeps the business plan in a drawer beside her desk. It isn't unfinished. In fact, it has been polished, revised, and updated for nearly a decade. The recipes have been tested. The financial projections have been reviewed countless times. Even the name of the bakery has never changed. Every January, she promises herself that this will finally be the year. Every December, she quietly closes the folder again. The obstacle isn't a lack of passion. It isn't a lack of savings. It isn't even a lack of opportunity. It's the growing price of uncertainty. Leaving her corporate job would mean giving up employer-sponsored health insurance. It would mean walking away from retirement contributions, a predictable paycheck, and the financial stability her family has spent years building. One unexpected medical bill, one slow business season, or one economic downturn could erase years of careful planning. For generations, Americans celebrated those willing to take risks. Today, millions still dream of changing careers, starting businesses, or building something of their own. The difference is that failure has become far more expensive than it once was, and before we can understand why so many dreams remain inside desk drawers, we first have to understand how taking risks quietly became one of the greatest financial luxuries in modern America. For much of the 20th century, the American dream was closely tied to the idea of taking chances. People moved across the country for better opportunities. They left stable jobs to start small businesses. They returned to school in their 30s and 40s. Families merely relocated in search of growing industries, believing that the temporary uncertainty would eventually lead to a better life. Risk was never easy, but it was often affordable. That distinction matters. In previous decades, middle-class households typically carried fewer long-term financial obligations than many do today. Housing consumed a smaller share of income in many regions. Healthcare costs represented a lower percentage of household budgets. College tuition was significantly less expensive, and consumer debt played a smaller role in everyday life. When setbacks occurred, recovery often required sacrifice, but not necessarily financial catastrophe. A failed business might mean returning to traditional employment. A career change might involve accepting a temporary pay cut. Neither decision automatically threatened a family's entire financial foundation. Today's environment looks very different. Many households appear financially stronger than ever before. Household incomes have risen. Homes have appreciated dramatically in value. Retirement accounts have grown over decades of investment. Yet, these same households often describe themselves as feeling increasingly constrained. The reason becomes clearer when we examine how modern household finances have evolved. A growing portion of income is now committed before families make a single discretionary decision. Mortgage payments, property taxes, health insurance premiums, auto insurance, retirement contributions, child care, college savings, loan payments, utility bills, monthly subscriptions. These recurring obligations quietly transform income into commitments. The paycheck arrives already spoken for. Economists sometimes distinguish between income and financial flexibility. Two households earning identical salaries may experience completely different levels of freedom, depending on how much of that income has already been allocated to unavoidable expenses. Financial flexibility is not measured by earnings alone. It is measured by how much room remains after essential obligations have been met. For many middle-class Americans, that margin has gradually narrowed. Housing provides one example. A family that purchased a home years ago may enjoy a historically low mortgage interest rate. Selling that home to pursue a new opportunity could mean replacing it with a much more expensive mortgage under today's interest rates. A career opportunity in another state may look attractive on paper. The housing market makes accepting it far more complicated. Healthcare creates another powerful incentive to remain exactly where you are. Employer-sponsored insurance often provides stability that would be difficult or significantly more expensive to replace independently. Leaving a secure job no longer affects only income. It may also affect access to affordable medical care for an entire family. Retirement planning reinforces the same pattern. Employer matching contributions, stock compensation, pension credits, and long-term benefits all reward continuity. Walking away from a position can involve sacrificing far more than a paycheck. The longer someone remains employed, the greater those incentives often become. The result is subtle but profound. Economic systems increasingly reward stability while making disruption more costly. This does not eliminate opportunity. It changes the calculation behind pursuing it. People no longer ask only whether an opportunity could improve their lives. They also ask what existing stability they would have to surrender in return. That shift helps explain why entrepreneurship rates, geographic mobility, and voluntary career changes have become more complicated financial decisions than they were for many previous generations. The American dream has always celebrated courage, but courage has never existed in isolation. It depends on the ability to absorb uncertainty, and as uncertainty becomes more expensive, even capable, ambitious people begin choosing predictability over possibility. Which brings us back to Jennifer. Her hesitation is not unique. It reflects a much larger pattern, one that becomes easier to understand when we look beyond statistics and into the daily financial decisions of a single middle-class family. Jennifer never imagined that financial success would make her more cautious. At 45, she appears to have built the kind of life many people aspire to achieve. She and her husband earn a combined household income of nearly $195,000 a year. They own a comfortable home in a growing suburb. Their retirement accounts have grown steadily for years. Their credit scores are excellent, and they have managed to avoid the kind of debt that often dominates personal finance headlines. On paper, Jennifer is doing everything right. Yet every morning, she drives to an office where she no longer feels inspired. For nearly 20 years, she has worked in corporate marketing. The job is stable. The salary is generous. The benefits are excellent, but the work no longer excites her. Long before sunrise, she often imagines something entirely different. A neighborhood bakery, fresh bread before dawn, coffee served to familiar faces. a business built around creativity instead of quarterly reports. The dream has never disappeared. Only the confidence to pursue it has. Friends often ask why she doesn't simply take the leap. After all, she has savings. She has experience managing teams and budgets. She understands marketing better than most new business owners. From the outside, she appears to have every advantage. Jennifer quietly smiles whenever someone says that, because what they cannot see is the invisible balance sheet she reviews every time she considers resigning. Her family's health insurance is provided through her employer. Replacing that coverage privately would cost substantially more. Her company contributes generously to her retirement plan. Walking away means giving up not only future contributions, but also the consistency that has helped her savings compound for years. Her mortgage payment is manageable because it was locked in at a historically low interest rate. If the bakery struggled and she eventually needed to relocate or refinance, today's borrowing costs would create an entirely different financial reality. Then there are her children. One is preparing for college. The other has only a few years remaining before reaching the same stage. Tuition costs continue rising faster than many household budgets. Jennifer wants to help, not because she feels obligated, because she remembers how much that support meant when she was younger. Every financial decision now extends beyond herself. Her husband supports the bakery idea. He knows how passionate she feels whenever she talks about baking. But he also understands the mathematics. Launching a small business rarely produces predictable income immediately. Some businesses become profitable quickly. Many require years. Others never reach the point their owners imagined. Jennifer isn't afraid of hard work. She expects hard work. What worries her is uncertainty. One slow holiday season, one recession, one unexpected equipment failure, one medical emergency. Any one of those events could dramatically change the family's financial trajectory. The risks don't exist independently. They compound. Ironically, Jennifer's financial success has increased the number of things she feels responsible for protecting. The higher her income has grown, the more commitments have grown alongside it. The mortgage, retirement savings, college funds, insurance, property taxes, family vacations, home maintenance. A lifestyle built gradually over 2 decades. None of these expenses feels extravagant on its own. Together, they form a structure that depends upon predictable income. Jennifer sometimes remembers her parents making difficult financial decisions when she was young. Money was often tight, but they seemed willing to take chances that feel almost unimaginable today. Her father changed careers twice. Her mother returned to college in her 40s. Neither decision was easy, yet both believed temporary uncertainty could create long-term opportunity. Jennifer admires that courage. She simply wonders whether today's economy asks families to accept much greater consequences if those risks fail. That question follows her everywhere. During her commute, while attending meetings, even on quiet Sunday mornings when she experiments with new recipes in her kitchen. The bakery still feels possible, just not this year. Maybe after the children finish college. Maybe after the mortgage balance falls a little further. Maybe after retirement savings grow a bit more. Maybe after the economy becomes more stable. Every milestone seems to create another reason to wait. Jennifer's story is not unusual because of the choices she has made. It is familiar because millions of middle-class Americans have reached similar conclusions. They are not abandoning their dreams. They are postponing them. Not because opportunity has disappeared, but because the financial consequences of failure have become increasingly difficult to absorb. And once enough households begin making that same calculation, the story becomes much larger than any single family. It becomes a reflection of how an entire economic system quietly reshapes the meaning of risk itself. Jennifer's story may sound personal, but it reflects something much larger than an individual career decision. Across the American economy, millions of households are reaching similar conclusions, not because they suddenly became less ambitious, but because the cost of uncertainty has risen steadily over time. Risk itself has become more expensive. This change did not happen overnight. It emerged gradually as multiple systems began reinforcing one another. Each system, on its own, appears manageable. Together, they create a financial environment where stability becomes increasingly valuable and disruption increasingly costly. Healthcare is perhaps the clearest example. Unlike many developed economies, health insurance in the United States remains closely connected to employment for much of the middle class. A stable job often provides comprehensive coverage not only for the employee, but also for a spouse and children. Leaving that job can mean navigating an expensive individual insurance market or accepting significantly higher premiums and deductibles. The decision to change careers is no longer simply about income. It may determine a family's access to health care. Housing creates another powerful layer of economic inertia. During periods of historically low mortgage rates, millions of homeowners locked in monthly payments that are difficult to replicate today. Those homes have become more than places to live. They have become financial advantages. Selling a home in order to relocate, launch a business, or pursue a different career may require replacing an affordable mortgage with one carrying substantially higher borrowing costs. Ironically, rising home values can increase wealth while simultaneously reducing mobility. The house becomes both an asset and an anchor. Inflation quietly magnifies these pressures. When prices rise across essential categories such as food, utilities, transportation, insurance, and healthcare, households devote a greater share of income to maintaining their existing standard of living. That leaves less financial capacity to absorb temporary income losses associated with entrepreneurship, education, or career transitions. Opportunity increasingly competes with necessity. Childcare and education introduce another layer of commitment. Many middle-class parents view investments in their children's future as non-negotiable. Quality childcare allows parents to remain employed. College savings represent long-term hopes for upward mobility. These goals are deeply meaningful, but they also reduce financial flexibility. The more responsibilities a household carries, the smaller the margin for experimentation becomes. Retirement planning reinforces the same pattern. Employer matching contributions, stock compensation, deferred bonuses, and long-term incentive programs reward employees who remain with the same organization. Each additional year of employment strengthens the financial argument for staying. Leaving may interrupt years of carefully accumulated progress. Again, the system does not prohibit change. It simply makes continuity financially attractive. Insurance has evolved into another growing fixed expense: homeowners insurance, auto insurance, umbrella liability policies, disability coverage, life insurance. Each policy exists to reduce uncertainty. Yet together they consume an increasingly meaningful portion of household income. Modern financial planning often involves purchasing protection against dozens of potential risks before pursuing new opportunities. Technology has added another subtle influence. Monthly subscriptions, digital services, software platforms, communication tools, and connected devices have become ordinary parts of everyday life. Individually, each expense seems modest. Collectively, they create recurring financial commitments that previous generations rarely considered. The modern household has become increasingly subscription-based. Small obligations accumulate into permanent expectations. Economists sometimes describe this broader phenomenon as declining financial flexibility. Income continues to grow for many professionals. Net worth often increases as well. Yet discretionary capacity, the ability to tolerate uncertainty without threatening long-term stability, does not necessarily grow at the same pace. This distinction helps explain an apparent contradiction. America continues producing talented entrepreneurs, innovative professionals, and highly educated workers. Yet, many hesitate to pursue opportunities they genuinely desire. The issue is rarely a lack of ideas. It is the growing cost of being wrong. A failed business no longer means only lost income. It may also affect healthcare coverage, retirement contributions, housing affordability, children's education, creditworthiness, future borrowing capacity. Each consequence interacts with the others. Risk has become interconnected. That interconnection changes behavior. The American economy still rewards innovation, but it increasingly asks individuals to bear more of the downside themselves. As a result, financial security becomes less about pursuing the highest possible return and more about protecting what has already been built. This shift reaches far beyond economics. It changes how people define success. It changes when they change careers. It changes where they live. It changes whether they pursue lifelong dreams or quietly postpone them for another year. And perhaps most importantly, it changes the questions people ask themselves. Instead of asking, "What could my future become?" more and more Americans first ask, "What happens if this doesn't work?" That single question may reveal one of the most significant structural changes shaping the modern middle class, and once that mindset becomes widespread, the effects begin extending far beyond careers and finances. They begin reshaping the psychology of an entire generation. Jennifer eventually realized that the hardest part of leaving her job wasn't financial. It was psychological. Every spreadsheet she created produced roughly the same conclusion. The bakery could succeed. It might even provide greater income than her corporate career. But every projection also contained uncertainties that could not be measured. What if customers didn't come as quickly as expected? What if a recession reduced spending? What if someone in her family became ill? What if the business simply needed more time than she could financially afford? None of those possibilities was likely on its own. Together, they became overwhelming. This is one of the quietest but most important changes affecting the modern middle class. People increasingly evaluate opportunity through the lens of potential loss rather than potential gain. Behavioral economists have long observed that human beings tend to fear losing something they already possess more intensely than they value acquiring something new. As financial commitments grow, this tendency becomes even stronger. A promotion may be exciting. Starting a business may be inspiring. Changing careers may promise greater fulfillment. But each opportunity also threatens an existing system of financial stability that has taken years to build. The larger that system becomes, the more difficult it feels to place it at risk. This creates what might be called the asterisk risk premium of modern life. The price of uncertainty is no longer measured only in dollars. It is measured in emotional security. Families no longer ask a simple question: could this make our lives better? Instead, another question arrives first. What could we lose if it doesn't work? That subtle change influences decisions every day. People remain in careers that no longer inspire them. They postpone graduate school. They delay relocating to cities with better opportunities. They avoid launching businesses they have dreamed about for years. Some even postpone starting families or pursuing creative passions because financial stability feels too fragile to disturb. From the outside, these decisions often appear practical. Taken together, they reveal something much deeper. An economy can continue growing while its people become increasingly cautious. Innovation depends on individuals willing to accept uncertainty. Entrepreneurship depends on the belief that temporary instability can create long-term progress. Career mobility depends on confidence that change will not permanently damage financial security. When uncertainty becomes increasingly expensive, society does not suddenly lose ambition. Instead, ambition becomes quieter. Dreams are delayed rather than abandoned. Opportunities are analyzed rather than pursued. Security gradually replaces possibility as the highest financial priority. Perhaps that is the greatest psychological transformation of all. The American dream has traditionally celebrated those willing to take risks. Today's middle class still dreams, still plans, still hopes, but many now feel that they must first protect everything they have built before they can reach for anything more, and that raises a larger question. If millions of capable people are choosing safety over opportunity, what does that mean? Not only for their own futures, but for the future of the American dream itself. For generations, the American dream was built on the belief that each generation could dare a little more than the one before it. A new business, a new city, a new career, a better future achieved not by avoiding uncertainty, but by embracing it. That belief helped shape one of the most dynamic economies in the world. Today, opportunities have not disappeared. Innovation continues. New industries emerge. Technology creates possibilities that previous generations could scarcely imagine. Yet for many middle-class Americans, the greatest obstacle is no longer finding opportunity. It is finding the financial freedom to pursue it. After years of building careers, buying homes, saving for retirement, supporting children, and protecting everything they have worked to achieve, many families discover that stability itself has become their most valuable asset. And valuable assets are rarely placed at unnecessary risk. Perhaps this is the defining paradox of modern prosperity. The more financially successful people become, the more they often feel they have to lose. The systems designed to create security can, over time, make change feel increasingly dangerous. The American dream has always been about possibility, but possibility depends on confidence. Confidence that failure is survivable. Confidence that one setback does not erase decades of progress. Confidence that tomorrow still offers room to begin again. Perhaps the greatest structural change facing America's middle class is not that people have stopped dreaming. It is that the price of pursuing those dreams has quietly become higher than many believe they can afford. And when a society begins protecting the life it has more than pursuing the life it imagines, it doesn't lose opportunity overnight. It simply becomes a place where caution slowly replaces courage. One careful decision at a time.